This is Plant-Based Briefing. Underage workers, millions of dollars, and trucks full of dead chickens. Inside the business of killing in response to bird flu. Part 1 by John McCracken at investigatemidwest.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. This is the Plant-Based Podcast where I curate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living, get permission, and narrate them to you here in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And this article is longer than that, so I'm breaking it into 3 short episodes. I'll read Part 1 today and then tune in the next 2 days for Parts 2 and 3. And I'm pleased to have permission from Investigate Midwest to share this article. I found it in the Our Honor newsletter, which is veterinarian Dr. Crystal Heath's newsletter. She is quoted in this article a number of times. She is amazing. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. Underage workers, millions of dollars, and trucks full of dead chickens. Inside the business of killing in response to bird flu. Part 1 by John McCracken at investigatemidwest.org. The federal government has a single contractor to assist with killing infected flocks, leading to delays and the use of controversial culling methods. When a poultry farm tests positive for bird flu, the clock starts. Within the first 72 hours, farmers start depopulating, an industry term for killing contaminated flocks. Despite the sweltering heat inside the barns, hired workers wear gloves, face masks, and other protective equipment and repetitively pick up flailing sick chickens and place them into a metal container filled with carbon dioxide. In a few minutes, the chickens are dead. In other cases, workers seal the barn doors and crank up the temperature, causing the birds to die from heat stroke, or flood the barn with a suffocating foam. In a few hours, most of the chickens are dead, and workers begin to haul thousands, if not millions, of lifeless carcasses out to dump trucks. The stench of death seeps into workers' clothes, sweat, and even the water they're supposed to shower in. This is the business of killing chickens during the ongoing bird flu epidemic. And business is booming. As the virus spreads and drives up grocery prices by shrinking the nation's supply of eggs and meat, bird disposal companies, environmental waste businesses, and large poultry producers have received millions of federal dollars to kill flocks, compost their bodies, and clean barns across the country. However, the scale and urgency of these recent depopulation events have left room for worker protections to fall through the cracks, Investigate Midwest has found. A review of thousands of pages of state depopulation inspection records and conversations with dozens of people who work behind the scenes has revealed underage workers in some cases have been hired to kill poultry flocks, handle dead carcasses, and clean industrial poultry farms. Workers sometimes lack personal protective equipment or receive damaged gear, despite the risk of the virus jumping from animals to people. And dealing with the federal backlog, some farms have used killing methods considered inhumane because it can be quicker and cheaper. The biggest factor in agricultural safety is the urgency, said Bethany Alcouter, Director of Research and Public Health for the National Center for Farm Worker Health, a Texas-based nonprofit that advocates for worker safety and health. Everything has to get done in a short amount of time, and that really can be problematic because there's not the same amount of time to adequately train workers. The current bird flu outbreak is also the first time in the nation's history that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has put a single federal contractor in charge of responding to outbreaks when a business or state agriculture department can't handle a farm's depopulation request. In the past, the USDA would train emergency response contractors across the country to deal with outbreaks in their state and region. This practice changed with the most recent outbreak when the USDA awarded a contract to Patriot Environmental Services to be the single provider of federal depopulation services. The use of a single federal contractor has caused delays when a farm requests assistance from the federal government to depopulate a flock, according to depopulation consultants, veterinarians, and state agriculture agencies interviewed. No interpreters, no PPE, just bloodstains and feathers. In July 2024, hundreds of workers descended on 2 poultry farms in rural Colorado, an hour northeast of Denver, to kill over 3 million egg-laying chickens. 2 of the state's largest egg companies had tested positive for bird flu, and their flocks needed to be destroyed. Officials with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, the USDA, and the Centers for Disease Control were on site at both outbreaks to monitor for systems of human exposure to the virus and to spot behavioral health concerns. That is, the psychological impact of performing high-volume animal killings in hazardous, often distressing conditions. CDPHE forms obtained by Investigate Midwest through public records requests show agency workers interviewing primarily Spanish-speaking workers. A behavioral health worker wrote in a daily report that USDA staff approached farm management and asked if they could meet with full-time farm employees to discuss working conditions, to which management said, "Absolutely not." They did not have the ability to go to the workers with us and did not have anyone who could be an interpreter for us, the behavioral health worker wrote in a report referring to USDA employees on site. A separate behavioral health official wrote that they witnessed workers with torn or missing PPE not being utilized, and saw animal matter including blood stains and feathers on workers' torn PPE. The same behavioral health official noted that culling and disposal workers were required to shower at the entrance and exit of the barn, but workers said several people were not showering because the water has a dead chicken smell, and the horrible smell stays on the skin. One of the July 2024 outbreaks was at an Opal Foods commercial egg facility in Roggen, Colorado, where 1.8 million egg-laying hens were killed. Opal is a private company headquartered in Neosho, Missouri, and partially owned by Indiana-based Roseacre Farms, the nation's second-largest egg production company. Opal Foods has received $24 million in payments from the USDA to cover the cost of the lost flock since 2022, a federal response known as indemnity payments. The other outbreak occurred at Morning Fresh Farms, half an hour away in Platteville, Colorado, where 1.2 million egg-laying chickens were killed. Morning Fresh is a subsidiary of Versova Holding, the nation's fifth-largest egg production company, which employs more than 2,000 people and purchased Morning Fresh in 2023. Morning Fresh received nearly $7 million in indemnity payments in 2022 and 2023, but federal data does not list them or their parent company as a recipient of funds in 2024. Depopulation workers on both farms spent hours each day picking up chickens, putting them in metal rolling carts, and filling the carts with carbon dioxide. This process subdues and kills the birds in a few minutes, but poses a danger to workers because of the repeated exposure chicken handlers have to sick birds, according to the American Veterinary Medical Association, a nonprofit that set guidelines for depopulation methods with the USDA in 2019. You just listened to Underage Workers, Millions of Dollars, and Trucks Full of Dead Chickens, Inside the Business of Killing in Response to Bird Flu, Part 1 by John McCracken at investigatemidwest.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. Please tune in tomorrow for Part 2 of this 3-part article, where you'll hear about underage labor used during bird flu responses in Colorado. And in Part 3, you'll hear about the one contractor system, whether it's efficient or overloaded, the payouts companies are receiving for killing their birds, and one of the cruelest methods of killing them. And please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.